Welcome to Fueling Conversations, a sport, nutrition, education network podcast hosted by Dr. James Fleming. In this episode, I sit down with Sinead Roberts, whose journey from molecular biology to combat sports has shaped her approach to performance nutrition. Now the nutrition and physiology lead for British Weightlifting, she works at the sharp end of weight-making sports. We dive into the science and culture behind weight cutting, why carbs and hydration remain non-negotiable for performance, and how to fuel athletes through tough cuts, heavy training and big competitions. A great episode for athletes, coaches and anyone interested in the demands of weight-making sports and applied nutrition practice. Let's get into it. Hi Sinead, thanks for joining me. And as this is a bit of an awkward one, as obviously the tables have turned a little bit. So we obviously created the Sport Nutrition Education Network podcast, and it's nice to have you back after a short kind of change in your kind of career path, if you like. So yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's weird being the other side of the fence. I love being asked questions.
Yeah, well, here we go. I'm going all in. So yeah, traditional kind of style. If you can just introduce kind of a little bit who you are, what you're currently doing, and then we'll go into a bit of that kind of career aspect.
The winding path. Yeah. So I am a performance nutritionist and physiologist really. Now I do a mix of practitioner work and then more education, research, sciencey stuff, and writing. So my main role is nutrition and physiology lead for British Weightlifting. And then alongside that, I still do some nutrition consultancy and support for athletes, primarily in strength power sports, still primarily weight making sports, with a few others thrown in there for fun. And then a lot of nutrition education workshops, writing, and some building back some research elements as well.
So just a few bits then to delve in on. I promise would only be half hour, 45 minutes or so tops.
I do nutrition is fun. You just basically build a jigsaw puzzle of what you like doing.
Yeah,
That's what I figure nutrition is.
Yeah, I love that. So can we just go into like a little bit about what's your kind of formal education route, and then maybe if you can touch on the feed, fuel, perform aspect, because I know that's where you're getting some of those athletes through as well.
Yeah, so I'm not really a nutritionist. So I would say nutrition is just my tool. So I started off as a pure biologist. So I was a molecular and cellular biologist. So my PhD focused on essentially anabolism. So how cells regulate the addition of mass and volume. So how they grow. And so in that I focus very much on the anabolic pathways, in particular. A pathway called mTOR, and at that time at least a lot of the relevant research in that area for what I was looking at was very much in muscle, and what I was doing in my PhD was kind of looking at how cell growth responded to stress, which got me interested in, well, where might you see stress in real life, and exercise being a physiological stress that can be both positive and negative, and that kind of got me interested in exercise, and then obviously that muscle focus in a lot of the research that I was reading. Then I parked it, left science for a bit, went into the corporate world, and then eventually for various reasons was like, no, I want to come back to science, but I want to work with people and I want to work in an applied setting, and I kind of want to use my business knowledge and sort of people and coaching and education elements that I'd built up when I was in the corporate world. So I was like, well, why not become a nutritionist? Because nutrition, food is what impacts those anabolic pathways so that they do respond positively or negatively to extreme stressors. It was kind of that combined with other things that I was interested in around kind of how the body is kind of remarkable at survival, no matter what stress you put under it, and it all tied in together. So I was like, well, sports nutrition works, because I can, get people to influence these anabolic pathways, but food's a very practical tool to use it with. So then I set up Feed, Fuel, Perform, essentially. Also did became registered sports nutritionist at the same time with Senna, and started off my goal at that time was I want to get this practical applied experience, but I ultimately do want to kind of get back into scientific research as well. But I was like, I'll park that for now. I need to build up the business and get real world experience first. So Feed Fuel Perform, when it started, was very much around our primary base for commercial reasons was recreational athletes. And then over time, I built up kind of sort of a professional or elite athlete athletes that I worked with as well. At various points, had a couple of nutritionists working in the business as well. And then I kind of realized that actually I didn't want to take it in the direction that I thought I did, which was to expand it into a large business with lots of nutritionists, because actually what I'm more interested in is kind of the science and the groundwork. And I actually didn't really want to manage a large business. It took away kind of the bits that I found interesting, and gave me the bits that I didn't find that interesting on a large scale. And so I went back to sole practitioner business, kind of reduced it massively whilst I thought about what I wanted to do. Alongside that, I'd started doing visiting lecturing at University of Westminster on their sport and exercise nutrition masters. And kind of about that time, basically a full-time role came up there, more or less, jumping around a bit. But and so I became sort of a full-time lecturer for a while, still kept on sort of my athletes that I was working with as a nutritionist as well. Worked on the sport and exercise nutrition masters at Westminster, became co-course lead of that, did that for about a year and a half, and then left there September last year, and am now doing a British weightlifting role and then various other bits alongside.
Love it. So like we said before, the whole puzzle pieces are coming together. Can you explain to us, is it coincidence that you did your PhD in molecular biology, kind of mTOR pathways, anabolism, and then you started working in nutrition, and then you ended up working in a weight-based sport? Or is it, and why is that? Has that always been a passion area of yours? Because they all seem to align quite nicely.
Not prospectively, in that I didn't seek to work in weight making, but essentially and this is why I always say to like new practitioners, just speak to and make as many connections as possible, because you never know when they're going to kind of feed back or how they'll feed back. But when I initially started the business, I was pretty much solely working within sort of the CrossFit functional fitness space, and through various series of events and clients that I had who told a client, I ended up working with a guy who ran a CrossFit gym, was a CrossFitter, but was also a Masters BJJ athlete, a very competitive athlete. And he asked me if I'd work with one of his athletes, who's a Muay Thai athlete, so a weight making sport. And I did, and kind of as a consequence of that and various things I did alongside that, got offered to work, was offered sort of, or people got in touch with me who were, again, in combat sports, at the time, MMA, BJJ, primarily. And so the original working with weight making wasn't intentional, but the reason I stuck with it and the reason it appealed to me was, again, that the physiological element. It's how do you get people to make weight while still preserving health and performance. So that's why I always joke, like I've come to enjoy I guess the psychology of food and more of what I guess you might classically call nutrition, but I'm not really a nutritionist by trade. I'm like, this is a cool tool where we can do fun things with the body with.
And I guess just from my end, like if you're going back, what were you talking about, a decade when you first started, maybe around that sort of time?
Geez, yeah, it's coming up to a decade. Yeah. When did I start the business? I started the business in 2017, so 8 years.
Yeah, so then if we go back and we look at research in weight making, which there has always been some, but historically not loads. And I know, I'm not sure what the person's first name is, but it's Real has done a lot of nice work in there.
Real, yeah. and joins
How
England. Yeah.
how have you navigated the space of weight making using theory, which has obviously been embedded in your studies as well as some bits that have come out there from Real and other good authors, and then how have you managed to embed that in a culturally quite challenging space? If you can share some of those insights, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I guess in terms of culturally challenging, it does depend on the sport. So for example, and it doesn't just depend on the sport either. I think it depends on the you know, the gym or the stable environment, the coaching culture, and that varies, you know, person to person, and how much it varies also depends on the sport. But I think, say, weight making in boxing is very different to weight making in weightlifting. Even in boxing, where so typically in professional boxing you'll have day before weigh-in, whereas amateur boxing you might only have a 2 hour weigh-in, and weightlifting would be a 2 hour weigh-in. So you might think, well, the amateurs in boxing would have a similar culture to weightlifting, but they don't. And that's partly cultural, partly also because I think you can get away with a bad weight making practice in boxing for longer than you can in weightlifting, for forced production, dizziness, passing out, versus I just need to be aggressive and adrenaline takes over. Obviously it takes a lot of skill and strength as well. But so I think yeah, it definitely depends on the sport. I would say that when I started working in weight making sports, particularly in combat sports, I typically would only work, or people would typically only employ me during fight camps. So they would bring me in to make weight, and then I'd always give them a recovery plan afterwards, but whether they followed it, you know, and that's for also financial reasons, particularly up and coming athletes, they don't have that much money. And actually, more recently, or in the last couple of years, I've really struggled and have mostly walked away from working in boxing. I still work with athletes I've worked with for a long time, and athletes that I have a really great relationship with, and athletes who do really well with their nutrition all year round. But I was finding it more and more, I guess, of just a personal, I guess, moral challenge, in that I was helping people to make weight successfully. And up to a certain level they would win, because if you're good you get away with whatever you like to a certain point. But then people would go away and have terrible nutrition after camp, and you do repeat camps and you start to see, you know, very quickly you're like, body composition is deteriorating, like this is not good for you, it's going to become worse and worse. And I felt just challenged by the fact I was helping them do something and they were winning, so there was no kind of, why would they change anything they do out of fight camp? Because to them it's not a problem, because they're still winning and they're still making weight. But I'm like, I can see that that's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem at some point in your career, because you're going to come up against someone where they've done it right, and we're kind of setting you up for failure by you thinking you can do this and you're still good. And it's certainly going to, although it might not be your priority now, it's not setting you up for great long-term health. And so I've actually stopped working in boxing. I take on very few boxers, new boxers. I work with the amazing boxers that I already work with because they're brilliant and I love them. And I've worked with them for years and they're wonderful and they're great. But I'm very, very careful about taking, because just particularly in that sport, I found it, I have a problem if I can't help someone year round.
Yeah, fair enough. And just wondering, from someone who's not worked with particularly kind of traditional weight making sport athletes, have you ever been in an environment where they've not made weight, or there's been very close to? Because I can imagine that all eyes are on the nutritionist, right? Not every weight making athlete has a nutritionist. That they often have someone in their corner who is going to try to control or help with that aspect. But have you got any examples or insights where you've been right on the edge, or there's been all eyes on you and you've kind of been like, well, this is a lot?
Touch wood, no one's not made weight yet, but I've got 15 people making weight this weekend, so let's just have all fingers crossed. only 10 of those are making weight, actually. 10 of them making weight. There's been one occasion when I thought someone wasn't going to make weight. And that was through for various reasons. They made weight in the end, but it was on the edge. And they performed, which to this day I do not know how. Physiologically, I do not know how they performed. It was a 2-hour weigh, and I do not know how they stood up, let alone performed. But I think as well, like in terms of that being on the edge with making weight, obviously you can miss weight, but actually in reality, it's not that difficult to make weight. It is difficult to make weight. It can be difficult to make weight in a way that's healthy and that you can perform. But most people can get you to weight. It might be dangerous, but they can get you to weight. Like that's almost not the difficult bit. So for me, yes, I guess the weigh-in is stressful, but for me, it's way more stressful seeing what they do afterwards.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, yeah, I could just shove you in a sauna if I wanted to. I don't. But I could shove you in a sauna and just dehydrate you to death. You'll make weight on the scales, but you're gonna look like a bag of potatoes when you like step in the ring or step on the platform. So yeah, I find watching them compete afterwards much more stressful, because I'm always looking for, is there anything that indicates their nutrition isn't 100%? Like if they're doing clean jerk, do they look dizzy because they're actually still dehydrated or anything like that?
I think it's a nice time to then walk into your current role then. So British Weightlifting, can you explain to people what weightlifting even is, for the non-weightlifting kind of audience?
Yeah.
And then explain to us kind of what some of the key parts of your role are, and then we might go into some of the nuances later on.
Yeah, so weightlifting is 2 movements, so snatch and clean and jerk. On the platform, you get 3 attempts. So in competition, you get 3 attempts at each. Each attempt has to be equal or higher weight than the attempt before. Lift as heavy weight as possible. But it does become very strategic, because on the platform, the weight, like I said, the weight will always increase, stay the same or increase. And obviously you're competing against others. So, you've got an element of, am I going to end up following myself? So I have to do a lift and then I do a lift 2 minutes later, or actually going to have to wait 10 minutes. Should I do some more lifts in the back room, because I'm not going to do a heavy lift, wait 10 minutes and then have to come out and do another one. So it's lift the heaviest weight, but strategy comes into it as well.
And what does your role look like now? And can you talk us through, I mean, you're working with some top end Olympians. I forget her name. Sorry to be disrespectful. I should know her name.
That's okay. I hate talking about who I work with. So
yeah, we're not talking. But anyway, you got Olympians in there. You got Olympians who have won medals. You can Google who they are.
It's not that I hate talking about who I work with. I just always feel bad, because I'm like, nutrition is personal. If they want to talk about their nutrition, they can.
So we won't delve into the kind of their specific nutrition, but you're working with some top athletes. Can you talk us through, what your focus is when you go in there? I know you're in there 2-3 days a week, because I know there's some times when you're more in there, more specific timelines as well. What does it look like?
So we kind of, I mean, there's a range of elements, and this applies like not just sort of with weightlifters, but sort of more broadly with whoever I work with or wherever I'm working. It's you've got kind of a layer of nutrition for health and life. How do we help you, or what can I do to help you eat in the best way possible for who you want to be inside and outside of your sport, and do that in a way that works with your lifestyle. There's no point trying to get you to cook for 3 hours a day if you don't have 3 hours or you hate cooking. So there's that element. Then there'll also be, an element of manipulating nutrition depending on what an individual's goals are at a given point in time, or their training load at a given point in time. Are they focused on building muscle mass? Is it a very high training volume? Do we need to have extra focus on what we can do with nutrition for recovery, etc.? There might be a weight making competition nutrition element there as well. So how do we fuel you into competition whilst making weight, if that is a relevant factor, if you sit, near the top end or above your weight class? And then how do you fuel on the day, so that you can express, all the strength you've been working on? There could be things around travel nutrition, injury nutrition, different bits like that. Then broader nutrition education as well, of individuals or groups.
Are you working with age group athletes up? So what does your job entail?
So I work one-to-one with senior athletes, and we have a broader nutrition support education kind of program across the other pathways.
Nice. And can you talk us through kind of typically what an athlete would be walking around at, how many kilos above weight, or is that not is that an assumption that's not always the case?
Yeah.
Or if you had to pick a percentage of your top athletes, how many of them normally walk around within their weight category, or how many? What's it kind of look like, or is that just not able to be done?
So for me, I don't think there's my belief is there is not a prescriptive weight you should be relative to your weight class. Ideally, you compete at the weight, or ideally you sit. Ideally, you train and perform and compete at the weight where you are strongest and most powerful, because there's a raw strength element and there's a speed and power element, and a technical element. So ideally, you compete at the weight where that is optimal for you at a given point in time, and it's going to change over your career as you build muscle, etc. Now, if that is in the middle of a weight class, awesome. You sit in the middle of a weight class. If that is right at the top end of a weight class or just above the weight class, then yeah, you probably do cut weight. In terms of making weight, you've got two elements to it. You've got weight loss, which is loss of actual body tissue. So ideally fat, we don't really want to be losing muscle. The aim of when we're losing weight is to preserve all muscle, or as much muscle as possible. And then you've got the weight cut, which is acute loss of non-tissue, the parts of you that aren't really used. So water, fiber, carbohydrates. So if you're sitting just above weight class, you can just do a weight cut. Now, there always becomes a discussion, or and this is any weight making sport. If you need to do weight loss, should you be in the weight class where you don't have to do weight loss, or is there a competitive or strategic reason for you to lose weight? So yeah, I'd say there is no kind of right place to sit. It's where's right for you, and where to compete again is where's right for you.
Yeah, and I think it's important, isn't it? Because I've been privy to some athletes that are like, well, if I go down a weight category, then I know that I'm more likely to get funding avenues and all these other things that are outside of maybe that initial point of view. There's so many factors that can influence that. So yeah, I think it's back to that whole narrative of working with the individual, blah blah blah, what we always kind of spout on about. Do you mind going into a little bit about competition nutrition? Selfishly, I'm really interested in this because I watch weightlifting and I see them all smash each other on the back and get G'd up, and they're just smelling salts, and then they go and, so what's going on beforehand? Because they must be doing so many warm-up lifts. So actually we see them do lots of maximal efforts, not lots, 6 maximal efforts, but actually behind the scenes it must be so important. And actually, what does that look like in terms of duration? And then is there any specific or how do you manage that from a nutrition standpoint, and how do we get them really pumped up and ready to go when, from an energy perspective, they've probably got enough stored in their muscles to go, if I'm generally
No, I think, and again, there's no research on this yet. But like, for example, even if someone hasn't been depleted of carbohydrates in order to make weight, say if they again, maybe if it was an evening weigh-in and they'd had like loads of food pre-weigh-in for the whole day, etc. But generally, say if someone didn't actually post weigh-in, they would, you'd know it by the time they got to their clean and jerks. They just wouldn't have the energy and power. And that translates because, again, in a long training session, if someone doesn't consume carbohydrates,
yeah, of course,
they hit the wall, sort of similar to as you would in running, or sort of your endurance sports, where you typically would think, oh, you need carbohydrate intake. But particularly, I think in the competition environment, I always say you need much more than you do in training, because you've got that added adrenaline factor. Apart from the fact you're maxing out 2 lifts, which you wouldn't normally do in a single training session, you've also got that adrenaline element, which obviously massively burns through carbohydrates. Heart rate's up, you're probably heats up, everything's up. So essentially it's all about carbohydrates, water and salt. So carbohydrates and hydration. Couldn't care less if you didn't. In fact, I would rather you didn't touch protein, because it's a waste of stomach space. It's going to give you no benefit on the day. It will probably help you be less sore tomorrow, but quite frankly, I don't care how sore you are tomorrow. You're competing today. You've got to perform today. Unless there is a really good reason why we don't want you to be sore tomorrow. I don't waste the stomach space or the like fullness. Again, in competition, adrenaline's up. People are normally less hungry anyway. You start to give them, I know, chicken breast. They're like, I'm full, and you're like, that's inconvenient. We need to get some carbs in you. So typically ditch the protein for the most part. There are certain scenarios where I would, which comes into sort of the psychology of some individuals feel like they need a full meal. So then that might trump it, depending what their appetite's like. But it's going to be, you have 2 hours between weigh-in and when competition starts. So, and obviously before competition starts, you might be the first out, you might not be lifting until 20-30 minutes after that. But, you know, you might warm again, and you may start warming up however long before it takes you to warm up. Is different for different people. But what we typically do is immediately after weigh-in, someone is likely to have, and again, this does vary, depends on the individual's stomach and appetite, but something that I would call more solid. So still a low fiber carbohydrate based item, but it might be something solid like, I don't know, a white pasta or white rice with a little bit of sauce so it's not completely dry, or like bagel and jam. Or cereal.
Nice, yeah.
Low fiber cereal, something like that, something that's like a normally between 1 to 1.5 grams of carbohydrate per kilo body weight in the first 60 minutes post weigh-in.
Nice.
Alongside, and I do this whether someone's dehydrated or not. I actually do the same rehydration protocol, because they need to be really well hydrated, particularly by the time they get to the clean and jerk. And if someone's just been so nervous they haven't drunk that much before, it kind of forces them to when it's in their plan, even if they have been able to, because they can make weight. So first hour after weigh-in, they'll have a litre of fluid with electrolytes. So it's an isotonic solution, which we may have carbohydrates in as well, so they don't have to eat as many solid carbohydrates. And they'll have that litre over the first hour. If they've been dehydrated, then it will be 600 mils in the first 15 minutes, 400 mils over the next 45 minutes. And then from there, fluid wise, again, it depends on the individual how much they need to have. We'll have tested this out, but they will be having a combination of carb drinks, water and electrolytes, and water, depending on the individual. So they're super hydrated through to the clean and jerks. I'll say why that matters when we get there. Then from the warm-up onwards, in the warm-up, they might have what I would still call sort of solids. So something like a Rice Krispie Squares bar or a banana, some dried fruit, something like that. When we get into the heavier of their lifts in the warm-up, and then between each lift on the platform, they will definitely have a gulp of some form of fluid, and then a little bit of carbohydrate, which might be in the fluid, or they might have a jelly sweet or two. And again, how much someone needs to have will depend on the individual, but you're essentially just topping up the carbohydrates. And what you have between the snatches, so the carbohydrates between the snatches, has zero impact on the snatch. You've got enough from beforehand, but it's just making sure you're not so depleted by the time you get to the clean and jerk. And depending on the competition you'll have and how many people are in it, you'll have a certain amount of time between the snatch and clean and jerk, only a small amount, like 10 minutes. So we might get them again, something like a couple of bites of a Rice Krispie Squares bar or banana, and then do the same kind of sweet and drink protocol through the clean and jerks as well. Caffeine wise,
Question, yeah.
often not. Often I always say to people, do you really need it before your snatch? Because the problem is, obviously, you know what happens when you over caffeinate, you kind of go all over the place. Adrenaline kind of serves the purpose of caffeine. If you add caffeine on top of that, some people find technique is obviously in precision is so important in the snatch. So you can end up with arms and legs a bit all over the place and actually not perform as well. So more and more actually people aren't having caffeine before the snatch, but what they might do is they might have it midway through the snatches, so it's there in their system ready for the clean and jerk.
It's really interesting because I guess for those that don't know weightlifting, and I've done my weightlifting level 1 years ago.
Did you?
But my flexibility was so bad on the snatch, I had to get someone else to demo it because I was like, it's literally on my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, the kind of neurological load through these lifts is huge, as well as that physical space. So it's interesting you introduced that aspect. In terms of, you mentioned lots of really rich context there for the listeners, which is great. So thanks so much for sharing. How do you underpin the science in that? Because you've said depending on what sort of, have you been doing lots of urine checks? Are you doing blood checks? How does, not without going into too much of the specifics, kind of how have you underpinned the physiology to direct your nutrition strategies?
Yeah, so I mean, a major one is, does someone get dizzy on a clean and jerk? If they do, it can be because they're dehydrated. So all your blood goes to your quads in the bottom of the clean because it's a squat and you've got a heavy load in your front rack, and then you stand up and there's not enough in your brain, going back to your brain because you're dehydrated and you just haven't got enough blood to get there. Or it could be low blood glucose, or it could be high blood glucose as well. So if someone is susceptible to dizziness in the clean and jerk, we can either test it directly and find out what it is, like where's blood pressure at, where's blood glucose at, where's hydration at, or we can just be like, let's make you drink more and see if that works. Which is quite often the solution. But you know, I've also had people where they're like, I'm getting dizzy in a clean and jerk, and I'm like, let's take out your electrolytes, you're having way too much salt and that's dehydrating you. Whereas others, it's like, no, we need water and electrolytes. So again, combination of, you can test all these things, and or you can do trial and error.
Yeah, I know there is a research arm within your role at British Weightlifting, and you've always been keen to kind of keep that one going. So yeah, it's interesting how you've got both strands of kind of using almost the common sense, but also making sure we don't overcomplicate things.
Like I always say this to people, like the science is really complex, but the answer is usually eat a slice of toast. Like the solutions are very basic.
Yeah, very true, very true. I always over sweat or overcomplicate things sometimes.
Yeah.
So I guess yeah, moving forward, what are the things that we need to watch out on? So I know are there Olympic trials, or is it a world championships coming up? What are the key things for those that are interested in following some of the athletes?
Yeah, you should definitely watch weightlifting. It's highly stressful to watch. It's great. Yeah, there's the British Championships this weekend. So that is, yeah, all the top lifters in Great Britain will be.
By the time this goes out, it won't be this weekend, by the way, guys.
So you can go and look at the results and see you did really well. World Championships are in October. Nice. Which will be, it's the first time, so weight classes have changed as of June this year. So it will be the first World Championships with the new weight classes, which is always interesting because obviously people move weight classes. You see different people competing against each other, and there are some incredible lifters in Great Britain, and there are incredible lifters like at the moment globally as well. So it'd be yeah, really, really cool watch.
Without going down a rabbit hole too much, what's the reasoning for the change in weight classes? Do they give anything, or they just say this is what we're doing?
They change them every cycle. So every Olympic cycle they change slightly.
Interesting.
Which does, I mean, I actually don't know the reason, but it would make sense, right? Because someone's always going to be advantaged or disadvantaged by a certain weight class. So
nice.
Don't know the history of it actually.
So just to kind of finish up, and you've given us so much rich stuff there from a weightlifting background, and also kind of your career journey. Any kind of advice or applications for aspiring practitioners, whether that's coaches in weightlifting or those interested in anabolism, building muscle, or just working in physiology and sports nutrition? Anything? Yeah, what would the snippets be there?
Talk to everyone. I think you never know when opportunities play back. If I think about how I got into weight making was the most random journey ever. How I got into weightlifting is an even more random journey. How I'm working with British Weightlifting. So you never know how who you work with or who you speak to is going to play out. Which also is I think it's really important that you always make sure you try, or you'll always mess up at some point in time, but try and make sure your quality of what you do, and your care, your customer care, and your network care is there, because you never know when someone's going to recommend you on the back of that. Yeah, don't be too narrow-minded. You might have an ultimate goal, but you've got no idea what will lead you there. So don't say no to things just because they don't seem to immediately fit into your plan. Might not be the best example, because like I was saying to you, I don't know what I do most of the time. I just say yes to things because they're fun. Then that might not be the best solution, but you'll learn something from everything. So don't turn down opportunities if you've got an opportunity that is viable to do.
I also think that's a good advice, right? Do stuff you enjoy. That's a really good message anyway. And then, try new things, keep your options open. That's all, it's such a benefit of this space. A lot of jobs are really narrow. You're in there, that's a career. This doesn't change. There's not new people. They're the same people, the same thing every day, just maybe under a slightly different nuance. Whereas we've got so much potential scope to enjoy or
so good.
Rotate and divert, and that's really good. And it can be quite daunting for some people as well. But I think that's what we need to kind of almost hold on to.
And I think when I started, I said yes to pretty much everything, because I was like, even if I'm, for the most part, I will always say there will always be clients that I won't work with, and there'll always be clients who I start working with and say, actually, this isn't going to work. But for the most part, I would say yes to things, even if I was like, oh, it doesn't massively excite me, because I was like, I don't have the knowledge and experience to say no. I haven't earned the right to say no. I need to learn things. I need to learn what I don't know, and that kind of things. And I still need to learn what I don't know. I still don't know most things about most things. But what's really fun now is that I am in a position where I get to only say yes to the things that I want to do.
Yeah, that's nice.
Which is really fun, and something that I try not to take for granted.
I also think what's come through is that, you mentioned you went into the corporate world. Although that might not be anywhere near where you're at now, you definitely took some of the learnings from that into your own business. And then without your own business, would you have had the same traction and so on? So I think we get lots of people now, particularly in the MSCs, that come from a completely different background, and they might be like, oh, I'm doing a bit of a transition, and they feel daunted when they walk in and see nutritionists or sports scientists or physios, and actually they can leverage some of their whatever it might be. We've had accountants before, we've had people in criminal law, all sorts of stuff, and actually it's that can actually be really really important for their navigating the next bit. So last little bit I've added in, I know since we did it before, I've tried to make it a bit more I don't know, structured in a very unstructured kind of very unprofessional manner. So I've got a few little questions for you. So would you rather, Sinead, give up ice cream or never have tea or coffee again?
Oh, I'm not giving up ice cream.
Never? Oh, there we go. Lovely. Any preference on ice cream if we were at the beach?
Nothing fruity. It's got to be like vanilla, chocolate, rum and raisins, salted caramel, mint chocolate, anything like proper ice cream.
I'm all chocolate. Just chocolate me up.
Actually, I don't like chocolate ice cream. I like chocolate in ice cream.
There's so many good ice creams, aren't there? So many. Yeah, that's why it's good having these kids as well, because they have like 2 licks. I don't want it anymore. I'm like, ice cream.
I get
not good for the dad bod.
I get through so much ice cream.
And the final one food or drink you couldn't live without. I did send you this over before we had the chat.
Did you? Oh, God. One that I couldn't live without.
Just food. What do you think of? I'm going, right, we're going out tonight for dinner. Well, you can have whatever you want.
Actually, no. See, steak's my favorite food, but I don't trust it in most restaurants because they don't cook it that well.
Here we go. Okay, so we're gonna have to pivot and go for something else.
Good. Well, no, but if it's one food that I could have forever, very nicely done. Well, no, very nicely done rare steak.
Ribeye, sirloin, rump.
Porterhouse, then you get fillet and ribeye.
Oh, here we go. Love it, Sinead. Love it. I mean, thanks so much for joining me. I think obviously it's a bit of a strange one when we both kind of co-created this whole thing. And I just remember years ago us talking about, how we wanted a kind of transparent place for people to have open conversations, and the fact that you've come back round, having gotten diverted into a slightly different path from the academic space I'm still in, and come back and shared all your insights is, it's testament to you, but it's also really, really useful for everyone and all the network that hopefully this does reach. So yeah, thanks so much for your time, for the openness on this, and I'm sure this will be really well received.
Thanks for having me.